Okay, we can start. So, welcome everyone to NJ Asia Live. We are really happy to have you all here today, Angular developers, enthusiasts, and community members joining us from a different part of the world. Today's topic is using Google Antigravity to improve Angular development speed. This season is all about working smarter and faster with Angular, improving developer productivity, reducing friction, and leveraging modern tooling and ideas coming from Google's ecosystem. If you create about if you care about faster Angular development, uh, better developer experience, modern Angular workflows, and staying ahead in Angular ecosystem, then you are absolutely in the right place. Now it's my great pleasure to welcome today's speaker, Jason Warner. Jason is Angular enthusiast and passionate mentor and active Angular community meetup organizer. He also an aspiring writer and Angular GDA, constantly sharing knowledge and helping developers grow through the community work talks and the membership. Jason has a deep understanding of Angular and modern development workflows, and today he will guide us through how Google Antigravity can help improve Angular development speed and efficiency. Jason, we are really excited to have you with us today. Welcome to NJRJ again. The stage is yours.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be back. I just sent a request to share my screen. Um,
Yeah, yeah, okay.
okay, let's go ahead and share screen one. We're going to treat this a little bit like a live share. Where did my chat go? I want to make sure that I can see the chat in case questions come in as we're talking. There we go. Perfect. All right, we're set up and ready to go. Thank you again. Man, NG Asia has been a lot of fun. You guys are an amazing community. I am very much looking forward to this. So we're in the era of LLMs and AI and agents and all of this stuff. Um, and there are, oh, is this not working? Oh, you know why it's not working? Let's get my Docker container going. Uh, so while we wait for Docker to come up, I want to show you guys the application that we're working with first. This was an application that we built on Stream together 2 years ago. And there's a reason that I picked this application. This application is it's a it's not complicated, but it has a unique architecture. Um, it is a full stack application. Um, so it's using Postgres on the back end. We're using Nest.js to do our API layer. Um, and we are using Angular on the front end. And so this application has a lot of opportunities to trip up LLMs and make their work a little bit more difficult. Um, so here's the application as it exists. Basically, we have a list of dinosaurs, and then some information about the dinosaurs. Each dinosaur can be, we can go into a deeper description. And then we've got the ability to edit the dinosaurs and make changes here. OpenAI, I need to I need to fix the OpenAI integration, and we'll probably do this on stream. But right now, OpenAI doesn't work. But classic Angular application, we have the ability to add a dinosaur and things like that. And so, it's not super simple. It's not super complicated. It's built using Daisy UI and it's built using Daisy UI and Tailwind. Um, so there's a lot to this application um, that allows us to see how the LLMs work. Um, so now that we've taken a look at the LLMs, let's go ahead and let's shut some stuff down um, to preserve a little bit of memory as I'm live streaming here. And let's talk about anti-gravity. Anti-gravity is a tool from Google. It's basically their fork of VS Code, and what they've done is they've added on top of it, and I think it's VS Codium, because the plugins for anti-gravity are from VS Codium, and we can take a look here and see, what plugins we have. I'll tell you right now, this is the smallest number of plugins that I've ever had in a code editor or anything like that, because anti-gravity and the agents are so good at analyzing code and things like that, that really all I've got is NX because we're using NX in most of the projects that I use. We've got the Angular language service. We've got Playwright for testing and ESLint and Prettier, some Python stuff that comes pre-installed, and then the winter is coming theme that I like for my VS Code. That's really all we've got plugin wise. Um, and that's a big, what do we want to say? That's a big thumbs up as far as I'm concerned for anti-gravity, because I could install a whole bunch of plugins, but I don't feel the need to. And we'll see some of that as we work through the code. The other piece that we need to be aware of um, when we're working with agents and LLMs, there are certain folders. And oh, come on. Um, so when we take a look at our folder structure here, you'll notice that we've got an agents folder, a .angular folder, a .gemini folder, a .IDE, a .nx, but also um, it might be in the Angular folder. Let's take a look at this in File Explorer. Um, this is fun. When I'm going to the bottom of the screen to try and swap, it's trying to resize the sharing. And because of that, I can't get my bar to pop up. But if we take a look at Angular, nope, that's not the folder. Um, maybe it's in my agents. Yeah, in my agents folder, there's a skills folder. Inside of the skills folder, I have all of these different files that talk about the Angular skills and common patterns. Right. And this is a common thing that you're going to see across any type of agentic flow. Inside of your agents folder, you'll have skills folders, you'll have instructions folders, and things like that. I didn't create all of these. Um, all of these come from another tool. And let me share that tool with you guys. Um, that's Angular Architects. So if you guys follow Brandon Roberts on LinkedIn, on Blue Sky, on X, or anything like that, he recently shared that the Analog JS team put together their Angular skills. And I just posted this link in the chat right now. These Angular skills provide, Claude, Gemini, open code, with Angular 20 plus patterns and best practices and code examples. And it goes through all the available skills, and it shows, this is how the folder structure works. But the nice thing is when they update the skills, because it's installed through npm, that folder is going to update for me. I don't have to worry about copying new files. In the past, I was using the Angular LLM text file. They had a text file that they suggested that you use. I find this one easier to use and easier to keep up to date. And the really cool thing about it, and do they talk about it? Um, I'm not sure if they talk about it, but the really cool thing about the analog.js installer is when you run the npm install for the analog.js installer, it presents you with a list of all of these skills. So if you're not going to use, let's see, what's one that you might not use? Um, Maybe you're not going to use SSR, right? So you could install everything but SSR. Um, and maybe you're not going to use the tooling, who knows, right? You can pick and choose, and if you want to add new capabilities later, you can rerun the npm installer and it will allow you to pick new tools to choose. I really like that I'm not throwing a ton of context at my LLM. Instead, the the analog Angular JS tools are allowing me to say, hey, these are the pieces that I care about. This is the stuff that I really want the AI to understand. And then, I can add more as I need it. But I highly recommend this library. It's been great since it's been released. And it really helps when you're working um, with anti-gravity or cursor or even VS Code with AI, AI tooling added. Those really help. The really cool thing about cursor is that me adding that agents file and skills, um, anti-gravity automatically understands it. Did I say cursor? I meant to say anti-gravity. Anti-gravity automatically understands common LLM folder structures and automatically adds them. Um, One last little piece of housekeeping with anti-gravity. And this works the same way across a lot of the agentic stuff. So if you do agentic in VS Code, if you do agentic in Cursor, whatever, you usually get something similar to this. My suggestion, set it on planning mode. Um, Fast mode should probably be named YOLO, because planning mode allows you to see what the LLM is suggesting to do, um, and then agree with it or disagree with it. And we're going to see some of that. I've got a bunch of stuff that we did on stream this week that I want to show you, because we we've got a limited amount of time, and I don't want to take a bunch of time up just waiting. So we're going to go through some of the stuff that we talked with the LLM on. We've been using Claude Sonnet 4.5, the thinking one. These are all free. Um, you'll be limited in tokens and stuff. That's why I'm using Sonnet instead of Opus, because Opus is, fewer tokens. I also have, actually, these are all free. I don't have anything in here. And you can see right here, it's telling me, hey, you can upgrade. So everything we're doing is entirely free within anti-gravity. So let's take a look at kind of let's take a look at the journey we use to get here. So right in the beginning, and let me see if I can make this bigger. Um, there we go. Is this big enough? Can you guys see my agent stuff over here? Um,
Yes.
if okay, if I need to make it bigger, just let me know. But anyways, um, we just started off and I just said, hey, it's been 2 years since I worked on this project. Give me an overview of the architecture and design. Um, I think this is an important phrase to use with agents. Provide your level of confidence with your overview. And then this is kind of a joke. In the past, it was found that if you added do not hallucinate to your prompts, that some LLMs behave better. I don't know if that's the case with Claude. I just added it as a joke because I thought it would be funny. So then anti-gravity is like, okay, we'll explore this for you. It analyzed everything, and then it realized that we're using Angular, so it started looking at the packages directory and the Angular and Nest.js structures. Um, and then it kept exploring and started looking at key files, and then we got this overview. So based on the overview, it's an NX monorepo. This is 100% correct. And it's a full stack dinosaur CRUD application. This is correct. We're using Nest.js. We were using Angular 17, and we are using Postgres with Prisma to do the ORM mapping. This is all 100% correct. The project structure, it goes through and it says, hey, the packages directory is where everything is stored. So the Dynos API is the Nest application. That's correct. There's a testing. Angular Dynos is the front end application. That's correct. And there's some end-to-end testing, right? And then it recognizes that, hey, there's some Angular libraries. We broke up our UI into UI components. We've got GraphQL client code that's auto-generated, UI code, components. This is the OpenAI integration. And then we created our own custom RxJS operator. Then it goes through the back-end architecture, giving us a whole bunch of information. Goes into the design patterns used, and then the endpoints used and all of that. The front end, again, Angular 17.1. State management, this one surprised me. It's using component store and signals, signal store. This was surprising to me because I haven't used component store in so long, and it was interesting to me that I would mix the two. And we're going to see later that I even tried to call the LLM out on this, but it's 100% correct here. This is the state management. And this is the power of using LLMs to analyze code bases. I would have assumed that I was using NGRX signals, and I still thought that I was correct because of the way things were structured. And it was structured in the way that I typically use for signal store. But no, the LLM called this out correctly. We're using Apollo Angular, and we're using Tailwind and Daisy and SCSS. And then we're using the Angular CLI with Webpack. This is kind of correct. The build tool is actually NX, but we give it a pass because it recognized what's going on. Gave us some information um, on the layout of the directory, but this is what I really liked. It gave us the routing. So the root routes to Dynos. This is the home component that lists the dinosaurs. We've got an add component and we've got a details view. The details view is what allows us to edit. And it goes through the home, the add dino, the details, the table component, the model for deletion, a whole bunch of stuff like that. The architecture patterns, we're using standalone components, that's true. We're using lazy loading, using the load component, which is absolutely true. We highly optimize this application for small bundles. And one thing that's really cool, and I forget that I can't do this, so let's go here. If we take a look at the bundle size, in the development bundle, notice that the main JavaScript that's sent to the browser is 11K. So we've got that entire fully functional Angular application fits in 11K, which is incredible. It's only possible because we're doing standalone because we're using modern Angular with lazy loading, right? There's a whole bunch more code for our application. But to get the application up and running, we just send 11K to the browser, and then everything else is lazy loaded, allowing the application to feel more responsive. The styles are our problem. Like we've got, 7 times the amount of bytes sent over the wire for our styles versus our actual application. And the reason for this is we're using Tailwind, we're using Daisy. There's a bunch of extra stuff here. We've talked about on stream ways of optimizing this. But think about that. We've got an entire Angular application that looks nice, is responsive, works well, and the entire bundle is less than 100K. Back in the Angular 9 days, this would have been unheard of. So the amount of work that the Angular team has put into bundling and things like that has been really, really cool. And I like the fact that it called it out, that we're using lazy loading. And then, calls out that hey, we're using features organized into NX libraries. Great. It even goes in and grabs the database schema from Prisma. And then it goes through the data flow. And I mean, it gives us so much, but it also gives us some nice, this is how you can start the application. And then, it goes through, these are what you're using for this. And then it gives us a confidence level. I'm 90% confident, right? What I'm confident about, the overall architecture, NX monorepo, Nest.js, and Angular. It's totally correct on that, right? The tech stack and dependencies, it was correct. Backend structure, correct. Front end routing, correct. Database schema, correct. Library organization pattern, correct. These are all correct. What it's not confident about, and this is why I asked for to give me, confidence rating. It's not confident about how NGRX stores are used. It's not confident about the custom RxJS operators that we created. It's not, you're right. There's a bunch of stuff here that is not confident about. And then it's like, this appears to be a demonstration learning project. And this is totally true, showing off, right? And this is where I tried to call it out. I was like, hey, I on stream, I'm like, why would we mix component store with signal store? So I just like, hey, what components are using component store versus what components are using signal store? And again, I asked for confidence level. And so it went and analyzed it. Component store is only used in one place, Dino CRUD store service, which is only used in the home component with 100% confidence. Oh, it's used in the home component in the dynos table. This we're going to take a look at today on stream. And let me grab my phone so I can watch my time just a little bit. Um, where I want to make sure that we leave some time at the end for questions, right? Signal store, everything else, right? 100% confidence. And so it gives me a summary and goes through stuff. And this is the point where I'm like, hey, this project is way out of date. What would you suggest would be the best way to upgrade? So the recommended upgrade strategy was to use NX automated migration. This is correct. 100% correct. Um, However, this strategy to do npx NX migrate latest was not the right way to go. And when we tried this, it failed miserably because we were 4 versions out of date. So we wound up going with this strategy of migrating to 18, then 19, then 20, then 21. But the running these, then yarn install, then run migrations. It's suggesting that we clean up migrations.json. This is where understanding. So one of the issues that you'll have when you're working with agents and LLMs is LLMs are very, very good at sounding confident. Um, and this step number 5, clean this up. This is a personal preference thing. I don't clean up migrations.json. I check them in because NX is going to replace them anyway. And if I check in migrations.json, I can see what migrations were run when that when we made that upgrade. And that I think that's important to be able to audit and look back at the trail. So again, one of the things that when we're working with agentic flows, when we're working with LLMs, be ready to be skeptical. Just because you have an LLM giving you something doesn't mean that you should follow blindly what that LLM is doing. Um, and this is especially important when you're doing vibe coding or you're doing code gen. Um, One of the things that um, I've been talking about with others is, let's say you have a massive code base. And let's say in that code base, the teams have been using nested subscribes with RxJS. Um, you decide to educate all of the teams and every engineer at your company to say, hey, we don't do nested subscribes anymore, right? And so from that point forward, everybody stops using nested subscribes, and everybody starts using whatever new pattern you put into place for for handling, whether it's switch map or who knows what you did, right? Um, and On the other hand, when you're running like an LLM, LLMs are basically the description I heard from somebody yesterday that I really liked was LLMs are basically a best guess regurgitator. Um, right? LLMs take as much context as possible and then give you their best guess. And part of that is you can tune all sorts of parameters about how LLMs generate what they send back and things like that. And that tuning allows that best guess to be, more consistent or, you can get wildly different things, right? And tuning different ways is used for different applications. If you want like a more natural sounding chatbot, you may tune certain parameters to allow the chatbot to have more freedom in the tokens that it generates. However, with like a code or something like that, you probably want to tune the chatbot or you probably want to tune the LLM to be providing the most likely tokens in most cases, right? Um, and so in that case, your skills as a developer are, or as an engineer, are way more important. And the reason that they're way more important is if we go back to the example we were talking about, um, and let's say you've been asked to add a new feature in a code base that has a whole bunch of nested subscribes, right, from RxJS. And you decide to use an agent to do the code gen and you go into your agent instructions and you say, hey, don't use nested subscribes, right? That's context that's fed into the bot or into the agent. However, a lot of other context that it's going to get by looking at files and things like that in your directory are going to be using nested subscribes. And depending on the settings and the tunings, you may get nested subscribes back, right? This is one example of why even with agentic flows, you should be verifying what the agents are generating. It's why your skills as an engineer are very, very valuable. Agentic flows and agentic tools are going to make you much more powerful as an engineer. Um, right? Like all of this stuff we just went through in the beginning. Um, it would take me it took the LLM maybe 3 minutes to generate all of that stuff we went through in the beginning. as a person, that's probably a day or two worth of work for me to go through, verify everything, right? Step through, jump into code points, be like, oh yeah, oh this is interesting, right? And then I might go down rabbit holes and be like, oh this is weird, and follow something and get distracted from my. I'm trying to understand the code base, right? With an LLM, I can get the highlights, and this is one of the things where I think agentic flows and LLMs truly shine. Um, they're pattern recognition machines, and so they're going to recognize patterns, especially if you give them the tools to recognize those patterns, like skills files and things like that. Um, but anyways, the option we wound up choosing was the manual version bumps. But what I really liked about Claude was it went and said, hey, from Angular 17 to 19, this is what happened. From Angular 17 to 20, this is what happened. Um, and so we got a whole bunch of things. And then it's like, hey, watch these, right? NGRX signals is still evolving. And some stuff here, and then it gave me some good ideas. Get a clean working directory, absolutely. Create a branch, absolutely. You know and this, I think, is one of my favorite ideas, and especially when you're using agentic flows, and if you don't use kind of the safer planning mode, um, for sure have a branch going, and make sure you're committing often to that branch, because you want to be able to see what did the LLM change. And we'll take a look at some of that. Uh, After migrations, it's really cool that it told me to run NX reset. This is something that I forget often, and having Claude tell me to do this was really, really cool. And then it's telling me, hey, run the lint rules, upgrade Prisma, and just some stuff like that. This is where it was wrong, where it just said, "Hey, just do this." It wasn't good, but we got through it. And then I just said, "Hey, we upgraded NX and Angular, but some of the other libraries are really out of date. What should we do?" And it sat here and thought about it, um, and it sees, "Hey, we upgraded to Angular 21. We're at NX 22." Um, but we needed to upgrade NGRX. It was still at 17. Um, and a lot of other stuff was out of date. So we decided to take well, and at this point it put together this implementation plan, which I really liked. So it generated this entire file. It even gave us, hey, if you're upgrading Tailwind from 3 to 4, there are breaking changes. ESLint to not 8 to 9 breaking changes. Um, and it gave us a whole bunch of breaking changes here. And it even talked about, hey, Prisma is a potential problem. And then it, here are the proposals and things like that it went through. Um, it even gives like some information about, what to do, and gives some good. So like it links out to the Tailwind migration guide. And right, it gives us a 60% confidence level here. One thing that I was sad about is that it didn't recognize that NX had a tool to help make this migration jump. And then, right, these are the low risk changes with high confidence. Um, and so it goes through a bunch of this stuff, and then um, gives a whole bunch of ways that we can validate and verify stuff. But then it gives a recommended order, right? So to do the minor patches and updates, we did that. The NGRX migration, this is something that I want to dig into because it gives us some information um, on how LLMs work and confidence levels. Um, One other thing that I didn't mention is you can comment on any specific thing generated with this comment, and it adds context to the LLM in the future, which is really, really helpful. Um, and then, it gives us an estimated time. So, um, it recommended starting with phase one. Great. I'm ready for phase one. Can you give me a step-by-step instruction? So when I asked for that, it generated this file. This file is great, right? Create a branch, clean the working directory. These are all really good instructions. And then it says to upgrade to NGRX packages. This comment is bad. Um, we don't want to use yarn. Um, and then, right, upgrade the testing libraries and then stuff like that. And then it goes through all of this stuff. And it even generated a task list for us. Um, so it set this up, created the instructions, put the file there. So then I asked for the steps. That's what generated the phase one steps. But I was not happy with the upgrade guide. So I said, hey, I have NX in this project. Let's use NX migrate instead of adding the yarn packages directly, right? This should pick up migrations from version to version. This is one of the things about LLMs and the way they're trained that I don't even know. It gets on my nerves sometimes. Excellent point. Great. I don't care that it's an excellent point. And then you're absolutely right. Migrate is the best approach. And then it just basically says it will handle the NGRX package upgrades and run automated migrations, right? Basically, it's rephrasing what I said. Um, and so using NX migrates, it goes through and creates all of this stuff. But in the steps, and I don't have this one anymore. It said that, oh, see right here in these steps, it's saying, hey, just tell it to migrate NGRX store. Well, anybody who knows NGRX knows that NGRX store is the Redux implementation. We don't have NGRX store in this application. We have NGRX component store and we have NGRX signals. We do not have NGRX store. Um, and it's giving me a 99% confidence. Um, but this is wrong. And this is where again our skills as engineers are important. Um, Based on what the LLM has been trained on, a good majority of projects that it's probably seen in GitHub and different repositories probably had NGRX store. And so it's giving me a 99% confidence level that this will be the right way to go. This is going to cause problems. We don't want to do this. And this is where having the engineering skill to understand that, hey, I need to correct the agent is important. And this is why I use planning mode also, because if I didn't use planning mode, it's possible that the agent could have gone and run this for me, which is not what we wanted. So I just said, I don't have NGRX store in this project. I think the migration would cause problems. And again, right, excellent observation. Nothing like if 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 this was two humans having the conversation, right? Um, and say you're talking to me, I'm the one that presented the NGRX store, and you're like, I don't have NGRX store in this project. Um, I think it could cause problems, right? Um, I wouldn't be like, oh, excellent observation. Well, right. I would be like, oh, my bad. Let's fix that, right? But it's like excellent observation. Let's check what packages you actually have, right? So it picks up component store, signals, and plugin, but not NGRX global, right? The global state management package. Since you don't have the full NGRX store setup, so now it's telling me the stuff that I already told it again. But you're 100% correct. Good catch. You don't have NGRX store. Again, if I wasn't confident in my skills, And if I wasn't confident to correct the agent, there could be some danger here. So I want to stress, I'm not anti-LLM. I'm not anti-agent. I'm not anti-vibe coding. I do think that when you start using LLMs, when you start introducing AI into flows, um, it's very much like bringing in a very, very eager junior developer who has infinite memory. And what do I mean by that? Well, they're very eager to appease you, to make you happy, and they've seen almost everything, and they'll think of, oh, over here in this project, I saw this. We should talk about this, right? Um, it's really cool. It's really fast, and there are a lot of times where I'm surprised by LLM ideas, and I've been like, oh, that's amazing, good idea. There are a lot of times where the LLM is like, oh, we should do this. And I'm like, no, that's a bad idea. No, we should do this. No, that's a bad idea. Oh, you're right. We'll do what you said. And then it goes back and it says, we'll do what I originally, right? It's just sometimes you just have to be ready to correct it. And it's like, you don't have NGRX store, only the standalone packages. So using this would indeed cause product problems. And then it goes back to the yarn upgrade, right? So we, and this is where it's like a very, very eager junior um, with goldfish memory, right? They can't really remember context from, an hour ago or who knows how long ago, right? And so it's like, the best way to do this is just to use yarn add, right? So we corrected the problem that it had with NGRX store, where it was saying, hey, use NX migrate with NGRX store, but then it turns around and says, no, the best way to do this is we're going to use yarn, right? And what's better is that it gives me a list of reasons why it thinks that this is better, right? No risk of adding unwanted NGRX store dependency. Great. I didn't want that. Simpler and more direct. Maybe. No migrations needed. Your code is already compatible. We don't know this, right? But it's confident. It's giving me a green check mark. We're going to go ahead. And then you control exactly what updates. It's giving me a 98% confidence level. This is bad advice. Um, and again, I'm not faulting the LLM here. If we look at like the code that's available in the wild, and I brought this up on stream too. If we look at the code that's available in the wild, the majority of code is jQuery code, React code, and then probably Angular code. Well, React probably isn't using NX. jQuery definitely isn't using NX. So it's recognizing that I'm using the Yarn package manager, and it's like, this is the right way to do it. It's not. Um, and so, right, we correct it. Your advice to use Yarn instead of NX migrate is bad advice. It will miss any migrations added by the NGRX team. This is an important piece of research that has come out recently with LLMs. If we're sugary in our language with LLMs, and I do this sometimes, and it's funny, but I'll find myself saying please and thank you and stuff like that. LLMs are trained to operate on language like that. There's an interesting bit of research out right now that says that if you're more stern with your LLMs, and even to the point of being like negative with your LLMs, you can get better results out of your LLMs. Here, I'm being stern with the LLM, right? Your advice is bad advice. It will miss migrations not added, right? Um, and again, it comes back, you're right. I apologize for the bad advice. You should always use NX migrate to ensure, right? And it goes through all of this stuff. and now it recognizes we have to use NX migrate and we don't have NGRX store. So now it gives me NX migrate. I ran this command and it was fine. Um, and NGRX was able to go from 17 to 21 with no problems. It grabbed all of the migrations that it needed. Um, so that's what we did. We migrated to the latest, and that's where we are now, right? And I wanted to walk through this interaction um, with with you guys today, specifically because this interaction is an important part of the way LLMs are today. If we go into a task with LLMs, and Antigravity is an amazing tool, Cursor is an amazing tool, Claude, Gemini, all amazing tools, right? Um, but they are tools. And beyond that, they're tools that can be faulty and make mistakes. Um, so we need to be careful um, when we're using these tools that we are confident in our skills so that we can help with mistakes. And sometimes we're not confident, but never be afraid to prod at the LLM and be, hey, I'm not sure this is correct, right? Give me a confidence level, things like that. So now, right, we've gone through stuff that we already did. I would have loved to have done this with you in real time, but what we went through here, we condensed probably 8 hours of working with the LLM into, 40 minutes of content. But I think it's an important thing to understand. The LLM absolutely shined in these upgrades. However, I had to understand my role and help the LLM give me the best answers possible. Um, so at this point, we've upgraded. There's still some upgrades that we're going to be doing on stream. I was going to run one more stream on Wednesday night, and some things came up. I wasn't able to do that. So Sunday, we're still going to upgrade. Um, we still need to upgrade Daisy and Tailwind, and that's probably where we're going to stop. But let's give the LLM a chance to shine, right? I've been a little bit harsh on it, maybe, but let's give it a chance to shine. So at this point, we've upgraded everything. Um, what I want it to do is I just want to say, analyze my project and give me the top 3 areas I can improve my architecture. Provide your level of confidence and the reasoning behind your decisions. And so at this point, it's going to go out and analyze a bunch of stuff in our project, right? And this is where like everybody is big on vibe coding. And I think vibe coding is an important part of what we're doing now. But as I look at the weaknesses that we have in my job, and as I look at the weaknesses that we've had in previous jobs, architectural decisions and consistency across applications is often the biggest issue that we'll have. It's going to come back with testing. We're going to tell it to ignore testing. Well, I think it's going to come back with testing because it's looking at my test files. But where I think a lot of value can come into an organization is if we start adding hooks, you know, hooks into our maybe our GitHub repos, or wherever our repos exist, right? If we do a pre-merge hook, and in that pre-merge hook, maybe we have some governance, right, organization wide, that we want to apply to our projects. Um, Maybe we have some security stuff that we want to look for in every project. Um, well, if in a pre-merge hook, or maybe a post-merge hook, um, we could have an LLM analyze what was added in that new director, in that new push, right? And tell us, hey, you should look at this because there's a security concern here. Or, hey, you missed some, you missed, what do we want to call it, like some architectural direction, or an organization-wide decision. Because one of the things that's really, really difficult for us as humans is keeping a lot of stuff in context, right? If we could have it automatically analyze for that stuff, it would be a lot better. So it went through and it analyzed a whole bunch of stuff. So the top three areas for improvement: error handling and logging strategy. It found console.error scattered through the code base. No centralized error tracking. This is a good one. Definitely something that should be looked into. But it's giving me 8 to 11 hours to fix that one. State management consolidation. This is the one that I was hoping it would call out. And it didn't disappoint me with a 90% confidence rating. We're using both component store and signal store patterns. Um, the impact is potentially team confusion, harder onboarding. The other impact here is signal store is the preferred pattern by the NGRX team over component store. Component store is looked at as more legacy, and if you're going to be doing something new, you should be doing signal store. If you've already got component store, then by all means keep using it. But we've got two patterns, and it's saying, hey, we should fix this. And it's saying, hey, migrate to signal store, which is the recommended pattern, or document the dual pattern. We're going to dig into this a bit more today on stream, or on stream. I'm so used to saying on stream. It's the problem of being a streamer, right? But we're going to dig into this a bit more here in the meetup. And it may continue in the stream, but this is the one I really wanted to dig into. I'm happy it picked it up. And then testing coverage. We knew that testing coverage was a problem. And so let's give it another shot before we dig into the architectural analysis. Um, let's tell it redo the analysis, ignoring testing, linting, and, well, let's not remove linting, ignoring testing and back-end concerns. Let's just see what it comes back with. If we tell it that all we really care about is Angular, right? The meetup is NG Asia. Obviously, we're Angular focused, and let's see what Angular patterns that it comes up with that I can do better at. This is where I think, I mean, the amount of work that it would have taken me to come up with these top three, and dig through all of the code. This is where I really think agentic is a big deal. Um, and it gives us superpowers as engineering leads, as architectural leads, as junior engineers, as senior engineers, as coders. The reality of LLMs in general is they're never going to generate something they haven't seen before. Um, and one way that was kind of driven home to me was early on. I got really, really excited about image generation. Um, and I was looking into image generation image generation LLMs, right? And I got into Comfy UI and stuff like that. I wanted to start generating like fantasy animals or sci-fi aliens or things like that. Um, and it was an exercise in frustration because I would start describing a creature, and maybe I would say, this is an alien. It has four legs. It has claws on its feet, right? Maybe there's slime. Maybe it has wings and things like that. And what would I wind up with? Well, I would wind up with a creature that had a xenomorph head, a horse's body, and maybe like Pegasus wings. I'm like, this is stupid, right? Well, the reality is that model, um, oh, it looks like we ran out of tokens for Claude. So let's go with we'll go with the Gemini 3 because all of these ones now I'm out of tokens. Um, so we'll go with the Gemini 3 Pro High, and we'll see if how Gemini does versus Claude. I found Claude to be a much better tool in general, um, but um, let's dismiss this. Um, and let's tell it to undo up to this point, and we'll just tell it to redo the concerns again, right? Using Gemini, and we'll see how Gemini does here. February 1st. That is Sunday. Well, that's good. Um, that means it'll be back for my stream, I hope. If not, I may have to go and just potentially pay for something. But I've put in a bunch of hours of work using the free models. So I should probably pay for something at this point. Um, so it's focusing on purely front end concerns. The interesting thing about Gemini is much more verbose in the way that it handles stuff, which is good and bad. Because of this verbosity, it's generating more tokens. Um, and the extra tokens, if you're paying per token, could be a problem, right? And so that's another thing to think about with agentic flows and things like that. Um, you want to make sure that that the token generation isn't eating up a bunch of tokens for things that don't matter, that just kind of disappear, right? Like the thinking stuff is all gone. So it says it's reevaluated the code base. So the state management consistency, again, component store versus signal store, UX architecture, preloading and optimistic UI, no route preloading chunks on click, and no optimistic updates. This is a fascinating call out and one that I hadn't thought about, but this again is why I think LLMs are a tool that give us as engineers superpowers. Um, and we'll take a look at this also. But I hadn't really thought about this. Um, and this may not be worth the investment in time, and that's a decision that we can make later. But it's calling out that, hey, I'm not preloading any chunks. And instead, anything I do is waiting for user interaction. I could go into my defer stuff and set it to be more optimistic. And the benefit to that is the stuff that Angular needs to load, it's going to load right away. And then once it goes into an idle mode, it'll start prefetching bundles for me. I really like this call out. Amazing call out. And we got this call out by just asking it to analyze our architecture and give us ideas. It's giving us an 85% confidence rating. I really like this, right? Preload all modules and implement optimistic state updates for a premium app feel. This is a really good call out. Really like it. And then resilient error handling. Again, this is true. We don't really have a good error handling solution. But that's because this is kind of a demonstration in a free product. I don't want to go set up something like Datadog or some other tool that will handle like my rum events and my error events and things like that. I don't want to set up Splunk for a tool that is more for demonstration purposes. So this is an amazing call out, but it's also not one that will probably actually, this is a good call out here. A network wide, we should have toasts and notifications. This is a good call out. This isn't what I thought it was. I should read more. And then it gives us a full detailed report, the executive summary, which I love. This is very much a Gemini-ism. Um, when you see an executive summary and things, you're probably dealing with an LLM, something generated LLM-wise by Gemini. There are others that do it, but um, most consistently, I see it from Gemini. Um, so Angular and client side, state management consistency. Again, the signal store consolidation, we're using two. We're using the component store and signal store with proper dependency injection tokens. Great. And it gives us this information about the mental overhead. Signal store provides finer grained reactivity out of the box. This is totally true. We agree. It says to migrate this. And here's the other cool thing about anti-gravity. Notice that when I hover over the Dyno CRUD store service, it highlights. So as soon as I click on it, it will take me to the file that it's talking about. So this is a big help also. So we'll be migrating it to Signal Store. We'll take a look at that. Lazy loading is present, which is good. And then it's saying, hey, we're using load children. Again, if we click into it, we can see that on the dynos path, we're using load children to load the dyno UI and then provide the routes. And so, we can go straight to the code that it's talking about. And um, and again, like we can look at the app config, right? With preloading. So this week with preloading is actually a pretty easy one to make. And there's a bunch of stuff here. We're going to follow through on the state management consistency. Um, and then it gives me an ROI, right? But resilient error handling, so provide HTTP client are configured without global error handlers. That's a good call out. That's actually a really good call out. Um, the toast component exists. It relies on manual store. If a global error happens outside the store, the user won't see anything. Very good call out. So we should implement an error handler and an on error to our Apollo options. Those are both great call outs and stuff that we can do. State consolidation, it's saying will take us 4 to 6 hours, a high ROI, and it removes legacy complexity. The UX architecture, it's giving us a medium ROI, which is probably true. The application is fairly fast as it is. So implementing the preloading while it is nice, is probably not going to give us a lot for the 2 to 4 hours needed. And then the error handling is, again, a high ROI because we don't get into this weird case. As we were going through this, there was one other thing that I thought about, and I'm very curious if Gemini can figure it out. Um, does this application use Zone.js? And should I remove it if it does? I'm very curious if because Angular 20 and 21 gave us a bunch of help around Zone.js and going zoneless. Um, I'm very curious if Gemini can detect that we are using Zone.js, and what its suggestion would be there. Um, so it did confirm that Zone.js is present in project JSON and package JSON. Um, it also told us, well, here we go. So yes, your application currently uses Zone.js. I found it in this package. I found it in the polyfills, and it is effectively enabled by default since you haven't opted into zoneless mode. So already it's able to tell us, hey, we have Zone.js. Should you remove it? Yes, you definitely should. Since you're running Angular 21 based on your package JSON, going zoneless is the recommended best practice for better performance and a smaller bundle size. Why it's safe for you? We're using signals, right? Your Dino CRUD store uses select signal, which works perfectly without Zone.js. So already, because we added the Angular skill files, it's able to detect that, hey, you're using signals, you should remove Zone.js. How to remove it? Remove the dependency, remove the polyfill, um, update your config, and add the specific provider. Um, It's saying provide experimental zoneless change detection. I think that was renamed in Angular 21. Um, let's remove Zone.js. So to do that in the appconfig.ts, so let's go ahead and pull up our appconfig.ts, right? And I'm sure a lot of you guys have done this um, in the past, but let's go ahead and make this zoneless. So here in our providers, our application config, so this is our Angular dynos. Um, and so we're importing Apollo, we're providing Apollo, we're providing the HTTP client, but here we want to provide um, zoneless change detection. So maybe our skills file is out of date. Maybe it's seen a whole bunch of experimental zoneless change detection. But we know that we can go with zoneless. There we go. So that makes us zoneless. But that doesn't mean that we necessarily have removed zone. Um, so we need to go to project.json. And actually, let's do this instead. Let's just search for zone.js. Um, so I guess it is only in one place. So we can remove this from our polyfills file. Um, and by removing that, we're going to remove zoneless. Let's go ahead and close that. So it was 100% correct here. I'm going to give it a pass here. I'm going to say, it gets an A minus. It told me the correct file to go to. It told me that I needed to add a provider. It didn't know the proper provider, but this could be because the skills file is different or because there could be a bunch of different reasons why. Like this was the most common way to do it, and the way I did it in most projects before this. And then npm uninstall zone.js. This I'm going to give it a fail because we don't use npm. But we're going to go to our package.json, and inside of here we're going to find zone.js, and we're just going to remove it. And notice it's already suggesting that we remove it. I could hit tab here and it's going to remove it for me. This is one of the really cool things about an agentic code editor, is based on the conversations we're having and things like that, it's going to suggest things, and me hitting tab will make those suggestions happen. That is why when you're working with like agentic coding, people joke about cursor removing lines and stuff like that. When you're doing that, make sure that you're using your make sure that you're using your branches and you're committing often to your repository. Um, it's going to be a big deal. So if we take a look at the changes that have been made so far, we removed Zone.js, perfect. We removed it from the polyfills, perfect. And then we've got provide zoneless change detection, great. So now we removed zone.js. And here's the difference between a streamer and an engineer. As a streamer, I'm going to hit commit right now. And there are a bunch of you out there that are engineers who are going, don't do that, right? You haven't tested anything. That's the difference between a streamer and an engineer. As a streamer, I'm creating content. This failure is going to force me to fix it if I fail. Um, as an engineer and in my day job, I would never commit this before I tested, right? This is me. This is me being YOLO mode, right? It's just like, let's do it. So let's see what happens. The first thing we want to do is go here and we just want to run yarn. And the reason we're going to run yarn is that's going to remove zone from everything, because we removed it from the package.json. We just want to make sure that yarn is gone. And I guess while this runs, time checks wise, how are we doing? It looks like probably about 10 minutes, and then we can get into questions. Um, so it's trying to run migrations. We don't need to run migrations. This is my, so I use, and I'm just drawing a blank right now. Why am I drawing a blank? Um, it'll come to me. My brain is focusing on 10 different things. And sometimes I run out of context in memory. Um, but um, I'm I've got an agent built into my prompt also. So now that we've run yarn, let's go ahead and um, we're going to go npx nx serve, and we want to serve the Dynos API on this terminal. So there we go. And then on this terminal, we're just going to npx nx serve our Angular dynos. And this should have removed our zone, and we can check that. So notice by making that change, we lost the 95K that was being served in the polyfills. So we no longer have any polyfills. So now we'll call this 9 and we'll call this 1.5. So 10.5K, right? So we've gotten much smaller, and there's probably other things that were affected by this. but already we can see that zone is gone. So we're going to verify that it works. And we'll go here and we'll reset and let's bring up the console. So everything looks to be good. Oh, so we're doing provide zone and provide zoneless. And if we go here, we can see that we're zoneless, but we do have an issue. So let's go see where we're providing zone. This is, um, so let's go here and find provide zone change detection on main.ts. Um, so in this app config here, this app config is an Angular Dino source app config. This main.ts is bringing it in from the app config. It's interesting that it would provide it here. This isn't where I would provide it. I think this was done by some upgrade automation. Um, so let's go ahead and save that. That should. So it rebuilt everything and um, so let's go ahead and refresh this. That error should, or that warning should have gone away. Um, so we're also getting a warning about HMR. There is some HMR issues with defer blocks. Um, but we can see that we don't have Zone.js enabled. Um, so at this point, we can check and see um, we can see that, hey, the application is working, the routing is working. When we go to Triceratops, that looks good. Let's go into Tyrannosaurus Rex. Um, we're going to say, you know what? It's not a giant chicken. Um, so we're going to take the feathers off of it, right? We're going to come down on the side of the debate that T-Rex did not have feathers. Um, And there we go. We can see that, hey, T-Rex does not have feathers. Let's go ahead and just add a dinosaur here. And we're going to call this dinosaur NG Asia. Um, the dinosaur's genus is NG. The species is Asia. Description, a meetup for the Angular community in Asia. You should attend. Right? I don't know many of you guys that have feathers. We're gonna say, everybody's 2 meters, and I don't know what, like 100 kilos. I don't know. I'm American. I don't know what kilos are. The genus must be, so the genus is going to be angular. And you know what? Let's make this nicer. NG Angular Asia, and let's go ahead and make that NG Asia. Um, but we can see that we got error messages. Everything's working. We're completely zoneless. We're in a good state. And you know what? Really, we want our T-Rex to have feathers. We've seen the light. Our T-Rex has feathers because we want something to have feathers here, right? Um, and our application works. We were able to remove zones, and we were able to do it um, largely with the help of Gemini. I I think this npm uninstall is coming from Gemini. Gemini doesn't recognize that we're using Yarn. But other than that, this was a good win for us. So let's go ahead and commit this. Um, so stage that, and we went zoneless. Boom. Um, and we have just a couple minutes to go. Let's do one last thing. Um, let's go ahead and close a lot of this down. Um, but let's this architectural analysis. Um, let's figure out. Let's just ask it one last thing, right? How would I go about converting everything to signal store? Let's just see what Gemini comes up with. We'll end on this. Um, but as you guys can see, vibe coding is powerful. It's here to stay. But where I think agentic and LLMs really shine is helping you. So when you write code and you're ready to commit, if you have an agent, just have the agent be like, hey, based on my changes, what improvements do you think I could make before I commit this? Or, or before I merge this, right? Or, here is here's the task that I was assigned. Um, and here's the definition of done. Is there anything I'm missing before I merge this and call the task complete? Just so that you can be more prepared for for the code review. So it's analyzed this. It created a task list, plan highlights, um, new store, create Dino's CRUD store using NGRX signals. Perfect. Refactor the home component and Dino's table component to use the new store. Remove the legacy Dino's CRUD store service. And then ensure sorting, filtering, and deleting continue to work one for one. Um, so let's take a look at the implementation plan here really quick. So the goal is to migrate from this to a new one. Um, we've already removed Zone.js. User review required. This refactor changes the internal. This is really cool that it called this out. Proposed changes. Um, New dinos crud store.ts, create a new signal store. Um, so it's going to have dinosaur state, assort ascending and has feathers, a computed sort direction and feathers filter, both good. Because if we go take a look at our application here, um, we do have this filter to determine only the dinosaurs that have feathers, which I'd completely forgotten to show off. So again, the LLM wins because the LLM is picking up on stuff that I'm forgetting about. Load dinos, and so it's giving us a whole bunch of stuff. Then it says, hey, delete this, remove the component store, and then we modify. So there's a lot going on here. This is a great plan. It's got a verification, how we can test it. I really like this plan. So we'll probably move forward with this plan in the near future. Um, yeah, that's what I've got for you today. I do want to open it up for some questions, and any comments or things like that.
Yes, we have some questions in our YouTube chat. So the first question from Mike, perspective from an architectural perspective, how does cluster feedback via anti-gravity influence Angular design decisions such as standalone components, signals adoption, and the state management pattern?
That's a good question. Very, very good. So when we look at what LLMs can do, we need to recognize um, that Angular is not as prevalent as some of the other alternatives out there, right? Like React. Um, so if you want to improve adoption of things like signals, of signal store, of signal forms, of standalone things like that, you need to be using skills files. That's why I showed off the skills files in the beginning. As soon as you give Angular those skills files, notice here that in this in the stuff we reviewed and in the stuff that was generated today, the LLM was calling out that signals are better, right? In the architectural analysis here, um, signal store provides finer grained reactivity out of the box, right? And it even tells us that it's the preferred pattern um, at other places, and this comes from the skills files. Um, so your architecture and your recommendations are only going to be as good as the context that the LLM has. If there is an LLM that's really, really good at Angular, it's probably going to give good Angular tips. If it's not good at Angular, then adding skills is going to be the way to go. I add skills all the time. How does it improve adoption? Um, it's impossible for us as engineers to be aware of everything out there. Um, the adoption of things like this, I like to use tools like linting and things and LLMs as a way to teach myself. So when I enable lint rules and it suggests something from the linter, I want to ask myself, why did it suggest that? It's the same with LLMs. I look at the LLM as why is it suggesting that and what can I learn? So I think as it suggests more and more, you're going to get better adoption. But the suggestions are only going to be as good as the tools or the skills that you provide those tools. Um,
Okay. Um, Next question from Daron. In a large angular monorepos, what rail gains does anti-gravity bring to builds and the CI/CD workflow?
um, yeah, that's a good question. Very good question. You guys are asking amazing questions. So where I work, um, we have incredibly large code bases. I have to be very careful about what I say here because I'm not allowed to speak for um, the company that I work for. But we have incredibly large code bases. And I don't want to talk about like the technology or stuff like that. I just have to be careful here. Agentic tooling and agentic flows allow you to understand massive code bases. Um, and I have been in my current role for less than a year. There's no way for me to know the code bases out there, and there are so many code bases and things like that. So when you're talking about super large monorepos or super large, just super large code bases in general, or even if your code bases aren't super large, but your mono repos are large because you're using like micro front ends, um, or on the back end, you're using microservices and stuff like that. Having a tool that can look at your mono repo and understand the dependencies between, the MFE that's injected in the shell, and how two MFEs might communicate and things like that, or or your microservices, what is the communication mechanism, and things like that, that's huge. So if you pull a large monorepo onto your machine and you use a tool like Cursor or Antigravity like we're using here, I tend to use Antigravity because it's free. Um, but as soon as you put that in place and you start asking questions, like one of the things in the past when I was using Copilot and code completion services, I didn't really chat with the LLM. In an agentic flow, like we're doing here, you can see a large portion of what I'm doing takes place in this window over here, where we're doing the agentic stuff, where we're asking questions. Hey, tell me about this, right? And a good example of that today was, this is a non-trivial code base. It's not huge, it's not small, right? I would put it in like a mid-sized application. Um, Being able to ask it, hey, are we using zone? And should I remove zone? And then have it analyze my project, be like, oh yeah, you're using signals, right? If we go back to this, um, should you remove it? Like it was able to pick up that yes, we're using it. But then I asked, should I remove it? Yes, you definitely should. Since you're using Angular 21, right? So that's a skill-based answer here. Going zoneless is recommended. Already saying going zoneless is an Angular-ism, right? Um, so our skill files again are communicating with us in the language that we understand. Um, and it is the recommended best practice for better performance, right? And then it's saying why we can do it. Well, you're using signals, right? And you've got legacy compatibility, and then right, it tells us how to remove it. These are these are the superpowers that the LLM can give me. For me to figure out if I was using zone, I probably would have missed it because one of the upgrades added zone to a place where I wouldn't look for it. Um, and so when we went zoneless, and this might have been a fail of well, it is a fail. I'm not even going to say might have, right? This it was a fail that it didn't recognize that we were using the provide zone change detection and tell us to remove that. But it got us 90% of the way there, and then a warning message saying, hey, you're providing both. Great, let's take it out. And now we're in a good place. So using a tool like this allows us to query our code and ask questions about our code. And then if we have good skills files, it can give us best practices, right? And that's the benefit, I think, when you've got large monorepos or large code bases.
Okay, the last question is what metrics would you recommend t- tracking to prove that Google Antigravity genuinely improves Angular development speed in the production teams beyond the subject developer experience feedbacks?
Oh, this one's tough. Very, very good question, but it's a tough question. And the reason for that is there's a lot of conflicting information out there. Um, there is information that says that AI generated code actually slows down experienced engineers by up to 30%, right? There's other information out there that says that that using AI in code speeds up organizations by 35%, right? And so there's a lot of conflicting metrics out there. Um, and this is where um, the cynic in me comes out. When you start introducing metrics, people will start to gamify those metrics. Meaning, if you start to reward engineers by lines of code or test, number of tests written. What do you get? You get more lines of code or you get more tests that aren't useful. And so you have to be very careful about the metrics that you choose. Um, but you also just can't throw a tool out there um, and be, well, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. We don't know, but we're paying for it, right? You can't do that in a business either. So when I look at tooling, there are a couple of things that I want to see. Is it making my engineers' lives better? Um, and by that, are my architects feeling like it's a better tool? Are my developers, engineers feeling like it's a better tool? If that's the case, then tracking that happiness is probably a good thing. Um, and one way to do that is, you're going to have camps that don't like LLMs. You're going to have camps that love LLMs, and you're going to want to track real data. Um, so I mean, you can start looking at things like potentially velocity improvement. You can start looking at your architecture artifacts and are those improving? You can start looking at things like CI/CD failures, and there are various metrics that you can look at because what you don't want to do is introduce a tool that makes you less accurate and takes more time. Um, so be very, very careful with the metrics that you choose, um, and be very intentional about the metrics that you choose. If the metrics that you choose are, how many commits, you may have developers that gamify that different ways depending on whether they like it or not, right? So that may or may not be a good metric. It really comes down to knowing your organization, knowing your development culture, and understanding um, what what are your KPIs, right? What are your key performance indicators? And how are you trying to move the needle that way, right? Are you trying to make your CI/CD failures less? Well, then start tracking CI/CD failures and see if introducing tooling is helping that. Are you trying to improve sprint velocity? Well, then see if the tooling is helping to improve sprint velocity. But I don't think that what you should do is introduce a tool and then make up metrics after you've introduced the tool. What I think you should do is come up with metrics that you want to track, right? Your KPIs, um, and then determine how you want to track those, and then look and see if introducing a tool makes those KPIs better over time. That's my suggestion. I don't have suggestions on KPIs to track. I know what KPIs I'm suggesting at work, but my organization is different than your organization, and my goals are definitely different than your goals. And that's where I mean, I'm going to be honest here. One of the best ways to come up with this is to go to, your LLM of choice and just be like, hey, we're looking at introducing agentic flows. These are, problem areas that we're seeing at our organization. What KPIs could we come up with? And then iterate on the KPIs that the LLM comes back with, and come up with some metrics that you can track. Just make sure that they're objective, right? That you can get objective data and that you can objectively compare month A to month B and see if there's progress or not. Um, that's my suggestion here.
Mm. Okay, so we can finish. Thank you so much, Jason, for insightful and practical session. We really appreciate you sharing your experience and ideas on how Google Antigravity can help Angular developers uh, move faster and build a better application. And thank you to everyone who joined us today for your time, your questions, and your engagement. This is exactly what NJ Asia is about, learning together, growing together, and the strengths the Angular community across the region. If you enjoyed today's session, follow NJ Asia for upcoming live streams and the meetups. Stay connected with our speakers and keep exploring new ways to improve your Angular workflow. Once again, thank you all for being part of Asia Live. So, see you in the next session. Happy coding.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.